Metacognitive Therapy Free Yourself from Imprisioning Thoughts by Linda Borland Sørensen. Read by Thomas Magnuson. For Spitzen Publish, 2023. This book is dedicated to my grandmother, Mamaya. The most courageous act is still to think for yourself, aloud. Coco Chanel. Preface. About thought. We're used to viewing our thoughts as though they contain a kind of truth that has value and meaning in itself, and is a part of defining us as individuals. In contrast, within the metacognitive approach, thought is viewed as an entirely different way and is given another meaning. Thoughts are looked upon as merely some electrical impulses in our brains that acquire the meaning we ourselves choose to give them. The content of our thoughts is unimportant. It is about how we relate to our thoughts and how we steer our thought processes. This perspective is the essence of metacognitive therapy. This approach is unique and essentially different from other forms of therapy, but just as important to know about. I often compare metacognitive therapy to penicillin. Most of us will need to take penicillin one or more times during our lives. Even though penicillin is not the answer to everything, it is an utmost effective remedy. Metacognitive therapy is also not the answer to everything, but it is a rapidly effective method when used correctly in suitable situations. Just as penicillin is necessary to have in our medicine cabinet, it is also relevant to know about the metacognitive approach and some of the tools this method employs. While we are unique individuals, with each our own characteristics and individual attributes, we're also part of a social context that is important to us. None of us are isolated islands that can just learn to control all of our psychological processes. There will be external relationships that influence us and that have an influence on which way of thinking we take to heart. In a society full of assessment and fixed schedules that we must try to fit within, it is easy to disclaim responsibility and let others act and decide for us. It is unfortunately still more often that we develop symptoms of anxiety and depression when we do not live up to these expectations or fit within these plans. Therefore, we must learn not to be held down by the subjective judgments of others, nor let our own negative thoughts drive us in circles. There will always be terms and conditions in our lives that hurt, which we cannot control ourselves. But there is also a lot of unnecessary psychological suffering created through our own thought processes. These thoughts are allowed to imprison us and keep us stuck in an uncomfortable place that is not pleasant to be in. We can minimize unnecessary psychological pain if we begin to focus on how we manage our thoughts instead of solely focusing on what they contain. Therefore, it is so important to disseminate the thinking behind metacognitive therapy, along with the awareness that we are not our thoughts, but that thoughts are something that we have. Throughout this book, through cases, I demonstrate how metacognitive methods and techniques can lead to significant improvement in relation to conditions such as generalized anxiety, social anxiety, depression, OCD, and PTSD. But I also show how we sometimes can over-psychoanalyze and create more problems than we need to have. This is not a book full of ultimate truths. This book demonstrates my personal approach to metacognitive therapy and takes a starting point in my understanding of the people I sit across from and the society that we live in. All the cases have been anonymized to a degree so that recognition is not possible. The point is to show how metacognitive therapy can be applied in clinical practice. This book cannot replace therapy, but should be viewed as a presentation of this method as I use it in my own clinical practice. Learning how to manage our own thought processes gives us the opportunity to act and no longer allows us to be imprisoned by rumination and worry. Linda Borland Sørensen, clinical psychologist, specialist in psychotherapy and supervision.